Hey everybody, KC here. So today we have a conversation with Nicholas Bertram, who's the CEO of Flashfood, which focuses on the problem of food waste. And I got to know Nick a little bit when he was the president of the Giant Company. I saw him recently when he was speaking on the same agenda I was at the Organic Produce Summit. And after hearing him talk, I wanted to have him on Morning News Beat to talk a little bit about what Flash Food is doing about the larger problem of food waste and what some of the solutions are to it. So I hope you enjoy my conversation with Nicholas Bertram of Flash Food. Nick Bertram, welcome to Morning News Beat.
Hey, Kevin, thanks for having me.
Appreciate you doing this. So, it was really interesting to me when we saw each other most recently at the Organic Produce Summit, and I thought you knocked it out of the park for that audience in terms of, I think, making them aware of a problem that maybe they were not as aware of. They didn't understand the extent of it. So, talk a little bit about the basic problem of food waste and how serious it is and what needs to be done.
Well, I mean, if you take all of the aggregation of food waste, put it together, it's 11% of greenhouse gas emissions, right? So that's more than most countries produce. And I don't know how to be any more succinct than that very thing. It makes no sense at all that great food, things that could nourish people, is instead being wasted, thrown away, breaking down and creating some of the environmental problems that many people are trying to solve. My passion for it, as I said, at the OPS summit or at the summit, was really not just the waste part or the environmental impact, but the human impact. Because every day we walk past people in cities and in towns that are hungry, that are holding up the cardboard signs that need food. And then every day, people that are driving by them are also going to be throwing things away, most likely either at their home or the businesses that they're shopping at. So it's a dumb problem. It's one that really should be pretty easy to solve. And yet there's a lot of different companies and, nonprofits and just, I would say, inspired consumers and students that are finally putting energy into solving it.
The thing that was interesting, no, I mean, obviously the human problem and the environmental problem obviously are interesting. But the thing that I think staggers some people, because it's hard to actually get your head around, is the economic waste, right? There's an enormous amount of economic waste built into this in terms of, I mean, let's bottom line, it's sales that aren't being made that could be made.
Yeah. No, it's actually crazy. Also, think about how many times you want to touch a tomato or touch whatever it is. And, as 20 years in retail, 30 years, I guess, like, you're always trying to take steps out, right? Because it increases freshness. And also every time that it's touched somewhere on the value chain, that is cost that's assigned to that. Now think about taking all of that cost, like you've worked really hard to optimize the supply chain, to optimize the in-store process, to optimize checkout. And now you're going to pay to have it hauled away and thrown away, right? And so you're tacking on additional costs afterwards when, as a retailer, you could have sold it. The same could be true as a wholesaler, distributor. You can look at different parts in the value chain. But yeah, it's a ton of waste, not just like wasted product, but also wasted time, wasted energy, and additional transportation costs that are assigned to it as well. You're spot on that one.
To what degree, when you were president of Giant or you were at Jewel Osco and then before that at Walmart,
Yeah.
what degree were you aware of it as an executive?
I'll go way back in time. Let me tell you how I was aware of it as a part-time stalker while I was in undergrad. I had to clean out the trash compactor in the back room of the super center that I first started working out at. I worked in the dairy department, so that meant I got to unload trucks, refill milk if there's something spilled, everything else. And a big part of that is just cleaning out the back room, taking care of broken products, dealing with claims and everything else. Inevitably, you're going to go into this hole in the wall where the trash compactor is at, which is like the worst smells of your life. Sometimes it gets clogged up. Sometimes you have to go underneath it and clean it out. And so, like, I know what it smells like. I know what it feels like to be on you when you look at like the amalgamation of all those different things. I know what kind of pests it, attracts and everything else. I had that burned into my mind, Kevin. And so as I advanced at Walmart into operations or running a region or, running operations for Joel Osco or eventually running the giant company, you think about that, you draw for those experiences, but you also every week, every month, every quarter are looking at a purchase and loss statement, right? You're looking at our profit and loss statement and figuring out all the different cost lines that are inside of there. And eventually you zero in on what the haul costs are and what you're actually spending and what the rentals are for compactors and everything else and what the maintenance costs are when you have third parties that come in and sanitize them or inspect them so that you always pass the health inspections. There's a ton of money that is assigned to things that are thrown away. And by the way, you're throwing away profit as you do that as well, because you could have sold it. And if you can sell it and get a quarter off of it and the cost was 50 cents, that's still, a quarter that you're recovering instead of 50 cents that you're throwing away, plus, plus, plus. So yeah, it's interesting. Like all of my different jobs from part-timer to, running giant, I felt I saw food waste, but I saw it a little bit differently once I got, in my final role.
For a, to a certain extent, I would imagine, though, at least in the beginning of the process, there were no, I mean, now there are mechanisms being developed to address the issue. When
Yeah.
when you started at Walmart or Jewel-Osco or maybe even at Giant, I would imagine there were no formal mechanisms to deal with it.
No, it's really the mechanism of cleanliness. Yeah. Like, so you're pouring things down drains that you might not otherwise do. You're not segregating out because it's not just like the food waste, it's also the containers that the food is inside of. And so the segregation of those materials, because it can be like an income stream when you start to, sell cardboard bills, probably not worth as much today as they were at the time. Then I remember we started putting in the lines of plastic inside of that. So you'd have these massive they were actually the ball pit things that I recall, where you put all the plastic in there, and you could create this thin layer of plastic that you compact in between the cardboard. And so, like that was legitimate income that you are taking a look at. The other side of it, though, yeah, I mean, you're just you're trying to keep things clean. You're trying to keep it orderly. You've got 4 to 5 more trucks coming in, so you really don't have a lot of space or time to do that. Ideally, you want it to go directly from the truck to the shelf to somebody's home. It doesn't always happen exactly like that with unpredictable consumer demand and weather and everything else that comes up. So, I mean, it's not. I try really hard, Kevin, not to villainize the problem or villainize those that are part of it, because I have a lot of empathy from the experience of just trying to run a great store or district of stores or region or entire company. It's not easy when you have so many consumers coming in with different expectations, so many supplier partners that are, coming in and helping out and everything else. So like I really do get it. And still, I know that there are ways that it can be better. And that's what's exciting to see across our industry right now.
Yeah. I mean, in some ways, and I don't think you put it this way on your website, but retailers sort of have a choice, right? You can send you can send excess food out the back door, in which case the retailer has to pay for it to go out the back door, or you
Mhm.
can send it out the front door, in which case the customer is actually paying for it. It does
Yeah.
that when you, in that sense, it doesn't seem like such a hard choice.
It doesn't, but which here's the challenge though. Which path has least resistance? Right. And that's really what everything it's really easy to throw something away.
Right.
I mean, really easy to throw something away. Quite a bit different to break down excess, to distribute recyclable materials one place, all these different things. And when you think about like I don't know, the whole process of recovering things today, like one of my favorite ideas from the last role was whenever we had all the stale donuts, yeah, and we were trying to figure out like people don't want to buy day old donuts. So, and I'm looking at this beautiful bread pudding. I talked to Brian, our director in bakery at the time. I was like, let's create something. Let's create donut pudding, right? It's got like the same idea. And all of a sudden there's another recovery item that matched like, the rotisserie chicken salad and things like that. So like the very best thing is to take the parts of those and repurpose them into some kind of great recipe that's still edible. Second to that would be finding a way to sell it to consumers who maybe were not going to originally, look at it. Third from that is to find some use for whether it's farmers or, animal feed, things like that. And then fourth is really, the turning it into reusable natural gases, anaerobic digestion and the like. But
Yeah.
the last on that list, man, is the one that you actually pay for. Like, and all of the other examples, you're likely making something. The last one on the list, you are paying more for something that you already bought.
So it's last on the list, but it tends to be at a lot of companies, it tends to be the first option, simply as you said, because it's the path of least resistance.
Yeah, you got 70 to 80% turnover in all of these different roles in stores, like, retraining, training, making things easier. Everyone knows how to throw something away. That seems to be like a really
Yeah.
easy, I don't know if it's just America, if it's global, but it's really easy to throw something away that you don't want or you don't see value in. It's a
Yeah.
lot of work to find a use for it that benefits humanity or, the
Yeah.
planet.
Well, the numbers on your on the Flashfood website are amazing. I mean, that 33% of our food supply goes unsold or uneaten. $145 billion worth of meals go to waste annually. $428 billion worth of food, um, goes to waste. I
Yeah.
mean, in the words of the immortal Senator Everett Dirksen, who only some of us are old enough to remember, a billion here and a billion there, and pretty soon you're talking about real money.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's crazy, and I want to give credit to Refed, which is an amazing organization that does so much research in this area and really brings together solution partners, retailers, and producers across the country because they're often the source of the data that we are talking about, and we're participating in their data exchange because they're leading the conversation and policy in Washington.
Is part of the key of making this work at retail providing a kind of turnkey solution for retailers that they don't have to either invest a lot of time or money or effort in?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big part of it. Turnkey is always like is a really cool phrase to use. I don't find that anything's actually ever turnkey. There's always something that's inside of it. So as a product-led organization, we really have two products at Flash Food. One is for consumers, which is really, really, beloved and popular. And, we just see a lot of activity with our, million users that are, or so million or so users that are engaged with us. The retail product, it's all about taking friction out. And I think about like if I am a produce department manager and I come in at 5 or 6 a.m., what are all the different things that I have to do that day?
Mhm.
Yeah. And I think about the different solutions that can make definite economic impact, but they're also going to cost you either mind space or time or steps or something else. And so turnkey is, on a commercial standpoint, yeah, got it. When I think about actually doing work every day, you've got to make it as easy as possible, take out as much friction as possible, and but also like prove the value. So when I think about the conversations that I have, I still visit stores all the time for our partners. It's actually kind of fun, right? Being pre-competitive, I get to go into all these places I never got to go before.
Mhm.
But you still talk to people on the shop floor, and you still hear like when they get, proud and what they're happy about. And there's this one seafood manager I always think about in the Detroit area, visiting their store, and he got like all emotional and everything. He's like, this is the best thing that my company's ever done. And, and then his boss comes out and is like, yeah, we're a zero shrink department now too, because, you're selling everything. And I don't know, I get fired up whenever I see people on the front line get excited about something. That's the magic that like usurps turnkey. Turnkey is great, but when you have engagement and buy-in from the front line, like it's unstoppable.
Explain, just so people understand, people who are not familiar with how it works. Explain, okay, you have that produce department manager. What is he doing in terms of interacting with your program and the product?
Yeah, I'll say first what he's not doing. He or she are not taking the things that they cull in the morning and throwing them into the typical spot, which would have been the garbage bin or the recycle bin, whatever it's going to be. Instead, so like the number one item that we have is this $5 mixed bag of 5 pounds of fruit and veg. And one of the first things that you do in grocery is you're always looking for the things that maybe are imperfect or you don't have enough of or discoloration, whatever else. Perfectly edible most of the time, like delicious, maybe even perfectly ripe for that moment, but not the thing that's going to look great on a table. And, American consumers, like we want to see variety. If there's only one, bunch of bananas left, it's got to be a bad bunch of bananas. And so I'm not going to get it, right? You want to see lots. So you get the pleasure of going and picking inside of that. So instead of, taking it away because it's not going to be picked by the consumers that are walking into the sell floor, you're instead putting it on a marketplace or application It's going up front, and it's really more like an auction. It's an auction that begins at, call it, 9 a.m. every day. That's usually when we see the postings go across our 2,300 stores. That's when, the time frame it seems to be. And the consumer gets to go in, and every day it's a little bit different every day, because you're extending the shelf life of things 24 to 48 hours or however much time it is through this application, whereas otherwise you would be getting rid of it, or you're probably not going to mark it down because you don't have space to mark it down inside of the floor, or different things. So Flash Food's a marketplace, and the produce manager, the department managers get to put their items on there that they either have surplus of, or they're nearing their best before date.
And they're segregating then that product in the department as well.
No, actually, there's a Flash Food zone. There's a pickup zone. Usually it's past the point of sale up on the front end. In a lot of stores, we have a 2-door refrigerator. There's usually a Metro rack beside of it for some of the shelf stable stuff and things like that. And that's the beauty of it. Like, the consumer comes in, they know where to pick it up. It says, every store has it distinct where you pick it up. So it's still out of the mind of the department manager. That's probably one of the things we don't talk enough about. You're getting it out so you can have full margin, freshest product in your selling floor. So anybody that does come in, they're going to see the full margin, freshest stuff. Those who, want something for tonight, for today, whatever else, want to stock up on something, want to experiment with the recipe, want to try that new line of yogurt that they've never tried, like, they're the ones that are on the app picking that up. By the way, once they walk in, they're still like, grabbing $20 is what our survey data would say, of full margin stuff, just because they walked into the store to pick it up. So it's driving traffic.
So pretty much when people are just coming in for that, they tend to be staying and doing other things.
Yeah, like 9 out of 10 times is what the survey data would say with folks. I mean, and they're also coming more often. We had Numerator actually run first person data across our entire partner base, and getting 1.1 more trips for Flash Food shoppers for our retail partners, and that went across all the different partners. So it's really a customer acquisition tool. I mean, probably our sales team should say, "Hey, can you give us the things you're going to throw away in the trash, and we'll give you cash and traffic for it." Does that sound okay?
Yeah.
Right, like that's kind of the sales pitch, dumbed down.
Yeah. Now I know you launched something new for independents. What is the difference in terms of how independents versus chains interact with you?
A lot of it is back end stuff, and so I think about smaller chains, 1-3 store entrepreneurs or proprietors. I think about basically it's the data ingestion process, it's the automation of that on the backside, and it's getting rid of some of the catalog calls that have to happen for enterprise level customers. We can still do that for them. It's just we have found that whenever we walked in and tried to sell to an independent, it's like, hey, here's all the different stuff. They're like, well, I don't have this department in IT, or this department in data management, or this department in accounting. Can I just sell it? And so we're like, yeah, actually, let's make it really easy for you, and just give you the chance just to sell it.
Yeah.
And it's been so cool to see some of these beautiful little shops that otherwise would not have, I guess, gotten paid attention by solution providers, and we're doing that now. And it's been really, really gratifying to see. I was at Earth Fair actually last week. We launched with them, 18 stores, and their story, from really inventing a niche industry to financial challenges, and now a good owner who's investing and bringing it back. And my gosh, Kevin, the pride in those store managers and in everybody that was there, and they were so excited to do this. And I was looking at the metrics this morning, like, they're on fire right now. Like, they're getting new traffic, and they're doing a good job with it.
To what extent do you find that retailers are marketing this aggressively and using it sort of as a differential advantage, really getting out there and making it part of their, whether it's on their app, in their online emails, or their texts in store, and really pushing this hard? I mean, I would think if I were gonna make the emotional and time investment in doing something like this, I'd really want to make a big deal out of it, especially if nobody else in my market were doing it.
Yeah. They each have different commercial calendars. And so one of the things that we've pivoted on, since I joined, was, instead of trying it to be our message, how do we complement their message, right? Because every retailer has their 52-week calendar. We've seen really nice success with that. I think about Giant Eagle, which is, I can't have a favorite partner, but Giant Eagle's growing faster than anybody else in North America right now. So they're on fire. I love everything that Bill has going on, in the brand period. But like Flash Food specifically has gone really, really well for them, especially once they turned on EBT and Snap. And now they're having our next innovation, which is a frozen offering. So they do a lot with, I would say, in-store communication. I think about our partner Meyer. They just did an email to, I can't remember how many, it was in their user database that they were sending a message out to highlighting it. So there's some co-marketing activities that take place. We actually have an employee program as well. And so we work with the CHROs of these organizations to give, as an additional benefit. If a retailer wants to invest with us on that, like we will co-fund that. Because I mean, we all know like the very best ambassadors for anything are the employees of a store. Like if they're behind something, then they get to tell customers. So we like to do things like that as well.
Why wouldn't a retailer make this a turn on Snap and make this part of their what they're doing there? I mean, especially at a time where everybody and their brother is complaining with some justification about
Yeah.
inflation. I would think that this would be a great. I would think that having programs like these would be a great way of addressing that issue. And quite frankly, to talk about something I talk about a lot on Morning Newsbeat, sort of taking the value meal argument away from fast feeders who are just giving you hamburgers
Oh
with
yeah, yeah,
steaks and fries.
yeah.
This is
Everybody
this
wants
is
to
the
do it. If,
ultimate value meal.
yeah, I mean, seriously though, I think everybody wants to do it. It's just a matter of where does it fall on their IT roadmap.
Right.
Yeah, like when is it going to jump ahead of some of the other initiatives? There's a very small, I mean, actually, there's not very much of a technical, connection inside of that because we process the transactions. It's more of, dealing with FINRA and making sure that the licenses are utilized the right way and, auditing those types of things. So it's just another process that I think that, I have an opinion, I guess, of how e-commerce and I would say consumers' ability to access assistance programs on e-commerce is versus in-store. I think the government can and should do a better job to make that easier, particularly for grocers, to be able to achieve that. And so we have a great partner called Forage, which is based in the Bay Area. They're the ones who have actually integrated for us and have like mastered that. And so they come in as a partner with us and the grocer. They were wicked fast whenever we launched Save Mart and got Lucky's on. That was our fastest deployment so far, basically starting when we launched the brand.
Yeah. You had to love it. I did see there was in the last, I think within the last month, there was this Washington Post columnist who wrote a piece, and the headline was "How I Fed My Family for Days with Food That Was Bound for the Trash." Right.
Oh,
Look at that and say, okay, there's the message.
yeah, by the way, he's an excellent reporter. You read his pieces, and he came to an event when we launched in the Bay Area, and so I got to meet him and learn a little bit more about what he had been up to. And then, of course, Esther, who leads our communications team, corresponded with him. He didn't want any executive interference in that, so it was like his research
Right.
proper. And
And you
got
were
to
never quoted. You just
no,
did.
he Esther, of course, offered me, but he's like, no, 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 no. This is my research. This is,
Yeah.
I personally love that. Like, I get more affirmation from people like you who have a strong opinion and say that something is good than I do from somebody who just wants to take a press release and call it an article and push it out as propaganda for a company.
Yeah.
I actually love journalism. I love journalists and people who actually do the work, inform opinions, and help their readership and or viewership understand something. I thought he did a nice job on that though.
Don't let the notion that you like journalism and or journalists get around because it's it's not a popular thought these days.
Hey, I want to be.
Although I'm with you. Um, one of the interesting things, and I think it may have been in the same Washington Post piece, was, and I thought this was really interesting, and it speaks to, I think, a different need or a different challenge, which is that they said that 43% of the food arriving in landfills doesn't come from stores, comes from people's homes.
Yes, sir. That's the next hurrah. And I can tell you what I do personally, and
Hmm.
it's big for me. But there's this company called Mill that has in-home composters, and it's beautiful hardware. They've done a lot to make sure that the price can be reachable. But they're still working on that and finding different uses for it. But so in our house, you know this, others might not. Like Jennifer and I have 5 sons. Like our oldest is 14.
I
And
can't believe there's any leftover food at all.
oh, well, I was gonna say one might think there's no leftover food, but we serve vegetables, right? Now, and so of course there's gonna be a little bit left over. But even like, and I love to cook. She does too. Like even recipes, you're not always going to use all the different pieces. We got that about a year ago. I met the team at Mill and was impressed by them. And we brought it into our home. It's been amazing. And so we've gotten into gardening a little bit as well. And it makes really, really cool compost and it works at night. You get to give it a name. Ours is called Earthworm. And so, after we eat dinner, we scrape it in there. What's really cool is my trash can now has a lot less in it. Like there was a point where I thought I was going to have to get a second trash can for our home.
Right.
We don't have that now. We have the recycle bin, we have the compost bin, we have that. And but you're spot on. Like consumers solving it in retail is a hard problem, and it's also, I mean, it's a profit making problem, and we're happy to be a solution for it. You get to the home, and it's even more interesting to try and solve. And Mill's really the first one that I've seen do something to bring that to life.
Yeah, it's an interesting challenge, and I think that, and I actually think that consumers are willing, but but they need to sort of be enabled and they need to be, it needs to be made maybe more accessible to them. I
Yeah.
remember when everybody's talking about, I mean, and it seems like a moot point at right now, but people bringing in their own bags to
Yeah,
supermarkets.
yeah, yeah.
Right? I mean, this was all happening when you were at Giant, right?
Hmm.
And I can't tell you, I used to write about this all the time. I get more emails from saying it's a waste of time, it's a waste of money. People are never going to bring their own bags. And I think, I mean, and this is, I have not only seen any numbers on this, but anecdotally, it seems to me when I go to the supermarket, everybody's bringing their own bags in. I mean, I rarely see people using
I mean,
used bags.
it's as a consumer, I think it's easier to do that. Especially like we had some in our lineup that were like big squares, and you could really load them up. Um, I don't know. I really like the idea of that. I also love scan and bag. I think Caper Cart is interesting. I mean, there's some neat things that are out there right now that can make it engaging while you shop and help you manage budgets. Um, it's one of those things that, again, to your point, like people said it wouldn't happen. It happens, right? I mean, I was in Philadelphia yesterday, walking down Market Street, and I saw this guy with one of our original, when I was a Giant, like one of the original bags that we had launched. And I was like, my gosh, that thing is 8 years old now.
Right.
It's 8 years old. And here's this, 20-year-old kid walking into a Trader Joe's, by the way, which, I'll have to talk to John about that. But it's like, taking that 8-year-old bag, and I'm like, that's so cool. Like, I love that people just don't waste. Like, what a cool use of that. Like, nobody ever expected it to get used that much, man.
Right.
And look at it, still being used.
Yeah. I actually don't think it's a bad thing when people carry other companies' bags into a store. Right. I don't, in some ways it becomes an advertisement for, it makes the
That's actually a
retailer
good
aware that,
point.
by the way, they're not only shopping with you, you still have some work to do. I think it's probably rare that I ever carry a retailer's bag into the retailer that I'm going to.
Huh.
Because I have so many bags, and in two different cars, I just kind of grab what's on top. And if I'm shopping at Stu Leonard's, I would bet 85% of the time I'm not using a Stu Leonard's bag. I'm using somebody else's. And that's fine.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You know,
Yeah, I guess it is. I hadn't thought about the advertisement thing. Actually, that's a really cool guerrilla marketing
yeah.
idea.
In the same sense. And the other thing is, I always thought that it would make sense. I know we're getting off topic here, and I'll let you go in a second.
Sorry, I love it.
What if checkout people were empowered to say, at let's say Giant, right? They walk in with a Trader Joe's bag, and the Giant checkout person says, "Hey, I see you got a Trader Joe bag. Want to trade? I'll give you a new one."
Oh, we actually did that at Heirloom Market.
Yeah.
Like whenever we first launched, like it was just one of those things we were so proud of the brand. We're like, all right, here we go. We traded it out. It
I would
worked.
think that would be a great thing to do, is get people to, if I don't have if I'm at Stu Leonard's and I don't have a Stu Leonard's bag, come on, we'll make a trade.
I love that idea.
And they can recycle, and they can just figure out a way to recycle the other ones,
Right. They can go in the plastic recycling easy.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Listen, I think it's an interesting continuum. I think it seems to me, I mean, a lot has been done, a lot more needs to be done. And if I can say so, I think the sector is better off for having somebody like you in it who's been a retailer, who's run retail companies, who understands stores and not just consumer behavior, but also retailer behavior differently than somebody who's, not to put down an entire segment of the population, but somebody who's a technology person who sees it as a technology solution as opposed to being a solution that just happens to use technology.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely been, I mean, I obviously believe that the company's benefited from what I brought to it as well. Um, it's also been fun though, just to learn from people who either started here, like some of the originals, or came from different sectors altogether. Like there's one individual who was going to be a biologist, right? And she's now one of the officers in our company. Her name's Callie, and she has just a totally different mindset that she's bringing into it. And I think about Jordan, our chief customer officer, who is, head of comms for and marketing for Impossible, right? And she was the founder of Sunwing, right? Like, so she's got this whole thing that she brings into it as well. I have found that the combination of all those things, plus like a really strong product leader, ours is named Fabrice, some really brilliant engineers, like it's the it's the mixture of those things that has been really fun for me as a guy who's always been in really large public companies to get to see that very beautiful and chaotic process of figuring out a solution with all these different vectors coming into it. But it is true. Like if you don't know your consumer, and we know, like we knew, I give Josh and everybody credit. Like we really knew the consumer part well. But when you're a two-sided marketplace and you don't really know what it's like to be a retailer and understand how small and tiny you are on their P&L and how small you are compared to other service providers or vendors, or what it actually feels like whenever you're getting a bunch of emails saying you didn't post, or blah blah blah, like that, there's just something to that. And I do think that it's made us stronger. And I think that like I'm now seeing it replicated with our regional managers across North America in both countries. It's been cool to see them really become advocates for their accounts, for their partners and brands that they're helping.
Well, listen, thanks for spending some time. I think it's all really interesting stuff, and I look forward to seeing you again down the road.
See you soon, Kevin. Thanks.
Take care. Bye.